Dear students, today we are going to start a new chapter, chapter 4, business services, and we will see the meaning of service, meaning of business service, and the characteristics of service. What exactly services are? Services, we say a company offers either a tangible product or an intangible service. So services are intangible nature. You cannot touch them, you cannot see them. Only thing is you can feel the existence of the service. So services are all those economic activities that are intangible and imply an interaction to be realized between the service provider and the consumer. Suppose if I am going to a store, Airtel store, and I want to buy a prepaid service from the service provider, that is Airtel company. So I will inquire about different schemes, about the incoming call facility, about the internet, how much pack they are going to provide me per day data, or might be yearly subscription, what exactly they have. So it is nothing but here the customer has an interaction with the service provider which is intangible in nature. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but only thing is you can feel the particular service. So these are all those economic activities that are intangible and imply an interaction to be realized between the service provider and the consumer. Services are those separately identifiable, essentially intangible activities that provide satisfaction of wants and are not necessarily linked to the sale of a product or another service. Now here we say identifiable, essentially separately identifiable. Now here every person, when we visit a doctor, the doctor is no doubt it is an intangible service, what doctor consultation, what is there, right? Every patient has a different experience, right? So it is, we cannot say that even one customer, one patient will have a similar experience than the other one. No, every patient will have his or her own experience with the doctor. All those commercial activities which are essential and helpful in the smooth functioning of production and sale of goods and services are called as business services. Now here we will look into from the point of business services. Now for smooth functioning of production and sale of goods and services, business does require certain services. So which are those services? It might be transportation, it might be warehousing, it might be advertising, it might be communication, right? These are certain services which business needs while manufacturing a product or selling it into the market. Either it might be a tangible product or it might be an intangible service. So business services are all those commercial activities which are helpful in the functioning of all business activities. In other words, the activities which facilitates commerce are called business services. So we say in the first chapter you have seen aids to trade. So different aids to trade we have studied: banking, insurance, communication, right? So all those activities becomes aids to trade becomes, or aids to trades facilitates commerce, so we call them as business services. Now what are the features? Nature of services can be studied with the help of characteristics or with the help of features of services. First feature is intangibility. Services are intangible, that is they cannot be touched. As I have already said, we can only feel the presence of the service, or only we can judge whether depending upon the satisfaction level, how best you are satisfied with the service provider, right? Based on that we can judge one particular services, but they are not tangible in nature, they are intangible in nature. They are experiential in nature, that is services are experimented, or services can be experienced well rather than rather than telling it in words. One cannot taste a doctor's treatment or touch entertainment. One can only experience it. An important implication of this is that quality of the offer can often not be determined before consumption. So here we can say, unless and until you buy the service or purchase the service, you cannot tell the quality offered by the service provider. It is therefore important for the service providers that they consciously work on creating a desired service so that the customer undergoes a favorable experience. For example, treatment by a doctor should be a favorable experience only. Right, so here we say service provider. How best a service provider gives you the information, tells about the product, depends on the experience had by the customer. Second one is inconsistency. The second important characteristics of service is inconsistency. Since there is no standard tangible product, services have to be performed exclusively each time. Now you can manufacture the car and sell it later. You can just convince the customer depending upon the features of the product. The customer can have a test drive of a car and then he can come to a conclusion. But it's not in case of services. Services need to be performed exclusively every time whenever the customer requires it. Different customers have different demands and expectations. Service providers need to have an opportunity to alter their offer to closely meet the requirements of the customers. This is happening, for example, in case of mobile services. Now, every person who is using mobile, he wants his own plans. Like, for example, one person may say 1 GB data is not sufficient for me. Every day I need 2 GB data. Another person may say I want a plan where roaming is free. Or another customer may say I have too much international calling and I want a package where international calls rates are minimum or standard international call rates are applicable. So in case of mobile service, different customers will have different demands and different expectations. So service providers, just looking after the needs and expectations of the customers, they have different plans. So services are not consistent in nature, they are inconsistent. Third one is inseparability. Another important characteristics of service is simultaneous activity of production and consumption being performed. This makes the production and consumption of service seems to be inseparable. In case of intangible service, production and consumption goes simultaneous. Now suppose if I'm taking a class, I'm giving a lecture, right? So side by side I'm giving a lecture and students are listening it. So if I'm on a leave on a particular date, right, you cannot separate the person from his or her lecture. So simultaneous activity takes place, production and consumption. But in case of tangible product, you can, like for example, if a person is manufacturing books, notebooks, yes, he manufactures it on one particular day and can sell the notebooks throughout a year. So here consumption, in case of tangible products, consumption is different and production is different. Inventory less. Now services cannot be stored. Once the service is lost, it is lost forever. So services have little or no tangible component and therefore cannot be stored for a future use. That is, services are perishable and providers can at best store some associated goods but not the services itself. Right. So as I said, they are perishable in nature. Once the service is lost, it is lost forever. You cannot store them. Like how we store tangible products, we cannot store intangible services. This means that the demand and supply needs to be managed as the service has to be performed as and when the customer asks for it. They cannot be performed earlier to be consumed at a later date. For example, a railway ticket can be stored, but the railway journey will be experienced only when the railway provides it. Yes, this is the best example what they have given. That is, you can store the railway ticket, right, but the experience cannot be stored, or when the experience you can experience whenever the railway provides the service. So whatever kind of service it is, you cannot store any kind of service. Once the service is lost, it is lost forever, because they are perishable in nature, right? And last one is involvement. One of the most important characteristics of services is the participation of the customer in the service delivery process. A customer has the opportunity to get the service modified according to the specific requirement. Suppose if I go to a showroom or to a mobile outlet or a service outlet for communication, might be I need a prepaid service, right? And if I visit any store, might be Vodafone or Airtel, unless and until I tell my requirements, my expectations, my needs, the service provider cannot help me out, right? So once I have to tell what kind of plan I am looking for, what are my requirements, depending on that the service provider can modify and give a plan which fulfills the needs and the requirements of the customer. So what it tells that the customer need to be involved in the process when the services needs to be delivered, right? So there are 4 features of services. First is they are intangible in nature. Inconsistency, they are not consistent in nature. The experience changes every now and then depending upon the customer's expectations. Inseparability, you cannot separate services. It means production and consumption take simultaneously, but in case of tangible products it is not the same. Services cannot be stored as they are perishable in nature. They cannot be stored for a future use. Once the service is lost, it is lost forever, but it is not possible in case of tangible products. Suppose if I am buying a notebook, right, or suppose if I am buying a two-wheeler, right, I can keep it. If I don't want to use it for 1 month, yes, I can keep it, and I can keep it for a future use. So tangible products, whether it is refrigerator, whether it is notebooks, whether it is car, whether it is your mobile phone, in tangible products services can be stored, but in intangible products services cannot be stored. And last one, involvement. So one of the most important characteristics of services is there should be participation from the customer. The customer should involve himself or herself in the service delivery process. Thank you.